What's good, YouTube? Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for Vernon Speak Sports Auburn. We're talking college football like it's nobody's business. In the Deep South, college football is king, and on the plains of Auburn, the battle cry is War Eagle. Fearless and true, gang. Let's go ahead and get this comment section active as arguably one of the more exciting parts of the year. SEC Media Days happening in Hoover, Alabama. For those of you who don't know where Hoover is, that is a city that rests right outside of Birmingham, right in the heart of SEC country. Birmingham is about 45 minutes, maybe an hour away from Tuscaloosa, where the great Alabama, who has pretty much had a stronghold on the SEC, rests. Big shout out to the University of Alabama, the capstone home of Nick Saban and their multiple national championships. So we had the opportunity to look at Ed Orgeron, the coach for LSU, who goes on the podium, went on the podium today talking about LSU football from a wide range of subjects. Number one, Ed Orgeron said, hey, look, we got to block out all the noise. And he's talking about an equally opposite situation this year versus last year. Last year, Ed Orgeron really trying to find himself as a college football coach. A lot of folks, even some of the internal LSU faithful, didn't feel that Ed Orgeron was the guy to succeed Les Miles. Going into the 2018 season, no one gave Ed Orgeron a chance. But what did he do? He starts the season out with beating Miami, winning a couple of games along the way, then makes the trip to Jordan-Hare Stadium with a top 10 Auburn team. A top 10 Auburn team that stumbled back into the game, going up 21-10, and with less than 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, LSU comes up with a very unlikely routine play for a touchdown, and late in the game, putting themselves in a position to win that particular game by a field goal, winning very heroically 22-21 over Auburn in Jordan-Hare Stadium. I have counted this as the last time in 2018 that you saw Auburn play on the level of a top 10, top 15, maybe even a top 8 team against LSU, but just couldn't quite get it done in that game. And in my honest opinion, beating Miami for LSU was huge. But to win psychologically on the road against a top 10 team in Auburn, that really set the stage, in my opinion, for LSU down the stretch. Now, they did play against Florida, and Florida kicked them around a little bit in a 27-19 win for Florida. But then you talk about Georgia. Georgia has enjoyed some nice recruiting classes under the Kirby Smart era. Georgia takes the trip down to Death Valley for the first time in who knows when. That's another thing in the SEC media days that they talked about is the scheduling, but that's another story. But either way, LSU plays Georgia, and, LSU whips Georgia around the stadium down in Death Valley. Now, that's something that Georgia has become accustomed to, especially in the Kirby Smart era, is that you win all the games, but when it comes to SEC West, high-level SEC West competition on the road, just can't get it done. You're talking about back in 2017, making the trip to Jordan-Hare Stadium, Georgia gets shellacked by Auburn, reminding Georgia, basically, hey, you're on your way, but you're not quite there yet. Georgia meets Auburn again in the SEC championship, returns the favor in rematch fashion. But either way, huge win, I think, for LSU over Auburn. And I think that was the monumental win for LSU in 2017 that started to make them believe. You already beat Miami. Now you beat Auburn. Now you start to believe. And that's something that there was a reporter that asked Ed Orgeron, like say, how did that feel? You know, to be able to overcome all the obstacles, overcome all the odds that were against you as a man, as a football coach, and things of that nature. And Ed Orgeron, in his most humble way possible, said, you know, I appreciate you asking that question, because those types of things are what help catalyze this season for us. And you can't discount all of the negative connotations that you hear in the media and them telling you, hey, you're not going to get it done. Hey, this is not your year. You're not the coach. And to be able to see the results on the field, I think that was huge for Ed Orgeron, and he made that clear in his press conference. Okay. Now, we talk about, you know, one of the things that he mentioned in his interview is that in order for LSU to continue this momentum is, number one, they're going to have to be a little bit more productive on offense. I think they will be. I really like Joe Burrows. I like what he brings to the table command-wise as a quarterback. I think he's going to be a strong force for the LSU Tigers coming into the 2019 season. He also talked about turnovers. Now, I didn't quite get this because when I look up stats for LSU, they were one of the best in the business in creating turnovers. Delpit, one of the best cornerbacks in the country that are coming back, had 5 interceptions. As a whole, LSU had 23 turnovers, documented turnovers. If you count the bowl game, you're almost talking about 2 turnovers per game, including the great neutralizing turnovers in the Auburn versus LSU game, where LSU had 2 turnovers against Auburn. So, no, I don't think turnovers are a factor. I think what you got to do is you got to get some offensive production against a team like Alabama, for example. Because I think last year, when you talk about Alabama and LSU, I think LSU gave the best possible blueprint at that point of the season as to how to slow down Tua Tagovailoa and the Alabama offense. No, you're not going to stop him. But there is some disruption. There is a slow down factor of the Alabama offense that you can take advantage of. And I think, you know, Dave Aranda showed that in the Alabama game from last year. The only catch was LSU just couldn't move the football. And then you have your best player on defense that's out until the second half, and Devin White, and he made an immediate impact. Upon his arrival in that second half, you saw why Devin White was missed. So when we look at this, when we talk about the Alabama game, he said, Ed Orgeron in his interview said, hey, look, we got to beat Alabama. And, you know, that is very true for Ed Orgeron and the LSU staff. You're talking about a LSU team that has not beaten Alabama since November 5th, 2011. They beat Alabama 9-6 in overtime, and that's the game that put them in the national championship game against Alabama in 2012. LSU subsequently losing that game 21-0. And ever since that time, LSU has lost to Alabama 8 straight times. Now, this is a game that I really used to look at as a rivalry in the SEC West, but that thing is really starting to dwindle away. Now, the reason that I started to look at it as a rivalry is because if you look at it between 2003 and 2007, in similar fashion, matter of fact, Auburn and LSU parallel in double teaming and beating Alabama up in the early 2000s. LSU beating them 6 times straight, 2003 on to 2007. And looking at the scores, it wasn't even close in a lot of cases. But now the trajectory has changed. LSU has not been competitive on a high level against Alabama. So Ed Orgeron is right. Yes, we have to beat Alabama because that's something that has not happened in you're pushing 10 years. So if LSU is going to be ultimately successful, Ed Orgeron called it out. Hey, we got to beat Alabama. And, you got to beat them this year. The catch is you got to go to Tuscaloosa to play them. Do I think LSU has the roster to do it? Maybe so. LSU always usually has the roster to play with anybody. They recruit on a very high level. So why not? And also with Ed Orgeron, that's why I could have a lot of respect for him. In this interview, he talked about also the mental health aspect of the players that is always, oftentimes overlooked. He talked about, factors as far as, getting over it. And that's something that people always say. When you're dealing with a mental health type of crisis, hey, man, suck it up, get over it. But then next thing you know, something tragic happens where this person either hurts someone or hurts himself. Ed Orgeron made it clear in this interview that LSU does all it can to put themselves in position to be there for these kids. And I will say this. Now, as an Auburn alumnus, as an Auburn enthusiast, and I'll go out on a limb and call myself a Auburn football and SEC football and analysis, but I don't particularly like LSU as a team, or whatever. However, I can give respect where respect is due. I am an Ed Orgeron fan because I am all for a guy that can beat the odds and make things happen the right way. That's why it pleases me to talk about LSU in this regard. Media Days 2019, something I've never done before. Never covered Media Days. Very flattered to be able to do this and to cover stories like this. Big Ed Orgeron fan. He's beating the odds down at LSU. And I wish him continued success, except against Auburn. I want Auburn to thrash LSU, but I want LSU to continue to be successful. And for these student athletes that commit themselves to these SEC schools, even down in Baton Rouge, I want the best for these student athletes moving forward. Once again, it's Kennard Vernon Stewart here for the podcast today, talking SEC Media Days. As always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger on this channel and on the Deep South, on the loveliest village of the plains where the battle cry is War Eagle. We'll see you next time, which will be very soon. Take care.